Thank you all for coming to this Zoom town hall. I'm John Kelly, member of Olympia Indivisible's endorsement team. I'm joined by John Cezanne. Tonight, we're talking with J.W. Foster, one of two candidates for the Thurston County Board of Commissioners District 2. Let's take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the ancestral land of the Nisqually, Squaxin Island, and Chehalis tribes, who kept this land and its waters healthy and bountiful for more than 10,000 years, and who still live here. Let's heed the call to right past wrongs, preserve this land for generations to come, and build together a community where everyone feels welcome. This meeting will be recorded. A link will be posted on the Olympia Indivisible website. Please stay muted. Put your questions in the chat with the letter Q before your question. John Cezanne will be monitoring the questions, and we will answer as many of them as time allows. So tonight we're talking with J.W. Foster. He's a candidate for Thurston County Commissioner for District 2. He makes a sharp contrast to the other candidate, Rachel Drayon, who we spoke with Tuesday night. Rachel has experience in social services agencies in the private sector and on public boards and committees, but has never been on a ballot before. J.W. ran successfully for Yelm City Council in 2011, was reelected in 2015, was elected mayor of Yelm in 2017, and held that position until 2021. Since 2017, he has served on various county boards and committees, including the Thurston Regional Planning Council. JW has been endorsed by a wide range of office holders and private citizens, from Congressional Representative Marilyn Strickland to incumbent Commissioner Gary Edwards and the entire Yelm City Council. That's a long list. It sounds like everyone who's ever worked with you thinks you're okay. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and why you're running for county commissioner?
With that intro, John, I just kind of want to leave it there.
Nope.
Yeah, so thank you for that and for getting my bio out there. To expound on that just a little bit more, my wife Nikki and I moved to Thurston County in 1988. I was a career firefighter paramedic. I started with Tumwater, but in 1996, the Thurston County Medic 1 wanted to open up a new paramedic unit in Southeast Thurston County. I interviewed for that head job and was given that. So I became the first paid firefighter in Yelm in 1996 and started that medic program. And of course, Nikki and I moved out here and we raised our 4 children out here, even though in 2001, I took yet another job as a paramedic, helping to start the program in Rochester. And then ironically, the county took that Sprint unit back and gave it to Tumwater. So 15 years later, I returned to Tumwater for my professional career. But meanwhile, out in Yelm, Nikki and I both got very involved in our community, of course, with the schools. I found myself on the Planning Commission first, which was a great place to learn about government and policy making. And at the same time, I was on the board of directors for the Nisqually Land Trust, and I'm sure that I'll reference my relationship with them even more as we get into the questions. But we found that was a great place for our family to do environmental work right in our backyard. And then from the Planning Commission, of course, as John said, I got on the city council. And then when our mayor left, the council appointed me to be the interim mayor, and so on and so forth. And what I found when I was being the mayor, and even before on council, that Yelm, all 3,000 of us that existed back in 1996 when we moved in, now closer to 10,000, wasn't considered very much part of the county government. It was Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater. And so I took action to fix that and got on every board that I could representing not just Yelm, but doing the county work that benefited the entire county family. So as was mentioned, I was on the Thurston Regional Planning Council and became chair of that group. I was also, like on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, on the Housing Council. I went to the South Sound Military Communities Partnership to make sure that our military families were being heard from. And pretty soon found myself hearing them say Tumwater, Olympia, Lacey, and Yelm as part of the big players in Thurston County. And so that made me feel pretty good. Then, as things happen, I hit that magic 65 a few years ago. And then things were winding down. Our daughter was having grandchildren, and by the way, maybe having another one any moment now. So forgive me if I have
Congratulations.
to answer the call. Thank you. But Nikki and I decided to take a break. We hit 40 years of marriage this year, and I want to keep that relationship going. So I asked her first, after a year and a half of fully retiring from public life, what she thought about me going for this commissioner position. And I'll tell you why it became interesting to me is because the commission went to 5 instead of 3. I haven't watched the county commissioners struggle over the years to be able to be collaborative, to communicate with one another without going against the Public Meetings Act, was difficult. And they also had, there are some 40 different lines of responsibility that the county commissioners have, and each one of those commissioners takes their share of that, and none of them were able to give full benefit of their relationship with those committees because they were overwhelmed with it. I heard that from the county commissioners themselves. So when they went to 5, when the voters agreed that we could go to 5, and same thing with the port commissioners, and it looked more interesting to me. And then I talked to our representative, Gary Edwards, who was retiring, and I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to use the knowledge and experience that I've gained over the past 30 years to further benefit my community at the county level. And that's why I'm running.
Great. Very well composed.
And by the way, excuse me. By the way, I run as an independent. I've very much aligned with the Democratic ideology and values over the years, but I've always considered myself an independent thinker and voter, and will continue to be that way, and build a bridge between the sides as much as I possibly can. In fact, as you'll see on my campaign sign, there is actually a bridge graphic that sort of iconics that. So there we go.
Yeah. Thank you. That was
yes.
I'm glad you got to the independent thing, because we were discussing that before you came in. Like, what's the difference between an independent and a moderate? Okay, let's get to we'll leave that question for later, but let's get to the questions that we have prepared for you. So as a member of the Planning Commission, was that commission responsible for the Thurston County Comprehensive Plan?
They are a big player in the comprehensive plan, but they're the regional planning organization, the MPO, for the entire region, not just Thurston County. The county commissioners would be the ones who would formalize the comprehensive plan. Okay, and can you tell us your feelings about the Thurston County Comprehensive Plan? Do you have any misgivings about it? The hardest thing about planning is sticking to it, because things change, and that's why I think the comp plan I think it's on a 10-year cycle, and I think it should be looked at and reviewed and updated more like on a 3-year cycle, because things change so drastically over that period of time. The comp plan tends to be more reactive than proactive, and I certainly had that problem out in Yelm when we updated our comp plan. By the time we were done with the review process, things were already changing again. It was like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. So I think that comprehensive plans are great, but they have to be malleable, and they have to be reviewed and renewed on a more regular basis. Interesting. Okay, so there is kind of a spectrum between a plan that locks you into
a structure that maybe no longer fits, and a plan that just gets rewritten every year as somebody else gets onto the council.
Yes.
Okay. Have you had any input into the Thurston 2045 comprehensive plan update project?
I have not taken the survey. I
Mhm.
have had communication with some of the county commissioners directly about certain elements of it, and but intend to be more involved in it, but not as involved as I should be at this point. No.
Okay. Your website says you want to leave the planet a better place than when we got here. How would you use the comprehensive plan to accomplish that?
Yeah. So again, something that you don't fix overnight, but we need to take a real close look at our land use policies to make sure that we we have to fulfill the obligation of the Growth Management Act from 1990, and I think that's a good thing. But we also have to make sure that people have the rights to do certain things with their properties, so long as they protect the environment. So and I'm going to lean more towards protecting the environment and creating good policy that we find a way to collaborate. So, a great example of this would be the Colvin Ranch out in Tenino,
Mhm.
where we put conservation easements on their property, and Thurston Conservation District and other organizations were all part of this, um, where they can continue to raise their cattle and it doesn't harm the prairie. In fact, it benefits the prairie species that were vulnerable if left to go to Scotch broom or other things. So we didn't take their property away. We didn't say they couldn't work it as a ranch. We found a way to make those things compatible. And I think the county policy and the comprehensive plan can go a long way toward creating those opportunities to try to work both ends of that equation.
Thank you. Um, how about new housing? Do you agree with minimizing new housing in rural areas, aiming for the sustainable
Yeah.
Thurston goal of no more than 5% being built
Yeah. And
outside
again,
the town areas?
I feel I feel really bad if you have 20 acres out in rural Thurston County and you always thought that you were going to divide that and put 5 homes on it. I get it. You were given some bad information when you bought that, if that was your plan. Uh, the When you spread out your population over such a wide geographic area as we have here in Thurston County, and then try to provide services to those folks, uh, you're going to end up losing out on that. As a paramedic, I responded all over Thurston County, and it was just terrible trying to go from, oh, even from Yelm out into Bald Hills, or from Tumwater going out into Rochester, where you have a 25, 30-minute response to people who expect you to be there in 3 minutes, as you would be if you lived in town. So people who people who live out in the sticks, if you will, need to understand that we cannot provide them with the services that they not in a timely fashion that they would want if they were in the more urban area, and that's the incentive to get people to fill in the urban areas. That's why the Growth Management Act drew those lines around the urban core and said build here. And if I may expound on that a little bit, is that we had two sides of the sword here in Yelm. When I took over as mayor, we were trying to fulfill that obligation to infill, but the we didn't have the water rights. And when we had
Mm.
applied for the water rights like 25 years ago, it took that long to establish more water rights with the Department of Ecology and the Health Department. And then Department of Ecology got sued for giving us the water rights. I don't know if you know that story very well, but at the point in time, we had only 110 equivalent of residential units left to give
Uh-huh.
building permits to in Yelm. Now, finally, that those water rights have been granted again to the city of Yelm, and so they can start to build up. And in the meantime, we had created zoning and building codes in the city limits under my watch, where people could build more densely on their properties. So, for example, right down that street from me, we had a small development going in that was supposed to be 18 homes. And then as we looked at it, we said, well, you know what? You've got enough setback. You could build a regular home And then right behind it, you could build a smaller home, almost like a mother-in-law apartment, if you
Hmm.
will, an ADU, they call them, auxiliary
Yeah.
dwelling unit, and still be within the footprint of that original home. So we went from 18 to 28 or to 29 or 30 actually units on that same piece of property that would have only held the 18 before. So there is room for improvement there, and each of the municipalities has to work at their end of it. And then the county has to be firm about don't let the sprawl go out into the county.
And you see that as part of the county's role.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the cities are apt to grow if not constrained.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, if you look at the Growth Management Act and the TRPC's population forecast, at some point we're going to run out of places to live. And it was the director of the Department of Transportation years ago. He said, "We are um, it's our own fault. We're the victim of our own success," is how he put it. Is that more people wanted to come here because it's such a great place to live, but we don't have the place or the water or the resources to, or the traffic infrastructure
Yeah.
to support the number of people. So it's a
Yeah.
tough one.
Your answer is really interesting to me because when we prepared this question, it was focused more on preserving farmland.
Mhm.
But you have come at it from a different perspective. That's equally valid. Um, are residential develop? We're going to get back to water in a minute, but I want to ask if what residential developers are contributing enough toward essential services.
Well, they do so, of course, in the impact fees that they don't like that much
Yeah.
to provide for the infrastructure, and then, of course, they say that the tax dollars generated by the property taxes on uh, those dwellings should take care of everything. But it is necessary to apply those impact fees to build the infrastructure to support the people who move into town. Um, So yeah, the builders have to take some responsibility. And when I was on the housing council, I know we talked to them quite a bit about what their bottom line was. Mathematically, they said, well, we have to make a certain amount of money to make this profitable. Otherwise, why are we doing this? But we can't build enough uh, entry level housing like you want us to and make that money. So that's where we would use federal money for the most part to help subsidize those builders to create
Mm.
at least part of their development as lower income or entry level or subsidized housing. And that works for a while. But really what we need is more building to bring down the cost overall. If we have more stock, it brings, hopefully, theoretically, it brings down the cost of the individual units, and people can afford to get into their housing more easily.
Right. So I sensed sausage being made back there with the federal money and the bargaining with the developers. I guess we can't get away from that. Um, how about
Yeah.
warehouses? Do they fit into a responsible land use plan? How many of them?
Well, it depends on where you put them. If you've got a place like Northeast Lacey that really built that into their plan and encouraged that growth in that way, then yeah, there's a great need for it. If you can build them close to your transportation hubs. I always thought that the Grand Mound area would have been perfect for that. They had uh, highways in both directions and the trains and
Mhm.
fairly close to a regional airport, but they went a different way. Lewis County is having more of the warehousing built down there, and they're doing it in an area that seems to be supported. I don't know what the tax revenue is from those to a county. It's probably equal to or greater than the residential tax, property tax, but I don't know for sure. So it
Yeah.
has its place, absolutely, but it has to be situated in a place where it's amenable to the community's aesthetic as well.
Right. Um, let's see. You mentioned the conservation plan, the habitat conservation plan, I think, in your questionnaire. Um,
Hmm.
there was the same place, the Colvin Ranch, right, where the conservation
Mhm.
easement enables both cows and Mazama pocket gophers to exist on the same pasture. Um,
Mhm.
how can we be sure that there's enough prairie left to support the pocket gophers?
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. Preservation of farmland. I didn't mean to minimize that. I'm a huge advocate for like the farmland trust. The more farmland and open land that we can preserve in our county, the better, in my
Hmm.
opinion. And again, we can talk Nisqually Land Trust all day long if you'd like to see what we've done there, uh, and and we will. But when you have such a unique ecosystem as is the prairie, you have to find ways to preserve that. When I first came to Yelm, I was told by my staff that we didn't need our own habitat conservation plan because we could just buy into the Thurston counties when they got theirs done. And naively, I believed that for about 2 years. And then after doing my own research, I'm like, I don't think so. For one thing, they're different species of pocket gopher. We got our own Yelmenses uh, subspecies of the pocket gopher. And so we probably, by Fish and Wildlife, would need to have our own habitat mitigation plan. So we started the process, and it's still in process
Hmm.
out in Yelm, but we're getting there. I love open land and have tried as much as I could to find ways to preserve that once again by uh, doing your development in the urban core. So I would love to see the stretch between Tenino and I-5 kept in open farmland slash pasture as much
Hmm.
as possible. And a great example of why that's important, if you're familiar with the Colvin Ranch, for example, when you go down Old 99 there, on the one side of the road, the south side of the road, you've got these beautiful green rolling hills dotted here and there with Angus, and on not a Scotch broom or a tansy in sight. And you look
Hmm.
directly across the highway at where the llama farm was, or alpaca farm, excuse me.
Yeah.
And it is just one beautiful golden field of Scotch broom and not a native species to be found underneath that invasive species. So if we can find ways to not only preserve that land, but put preservation work onto them and restore the prairie, the better.
Yeah.
And our friends at JBLM have done a great job of that. I just was on the honor walk with the Nisqually to honor Chief Leshai and Weymouth. And you walk, they open up their impact area down this road, and thankfully they clear it of any munitions before they let us go walk on it.
I'll
Yeah,
consider it.
and you go through these, 1,000 acres of just beautiful, pristine pasture or prairie, excuse me, that looks exactly like it did 10,000 years ago when the Nisqually lived there. And the reason it's so well preserved is because nobody can develop it or do anything on it, well,
Hmm.
except drop a few artillery shells from now and then, and somehow I know, but somehow the pocket gophers have thrived in that
Uh-huh.
environment, as has the Taylor checker spot butterfly and some of the other vulnerable species. So there are multiple ways for us to preserve that open land, and I'm all for looking at each one of them.
Great, thank you. Let's get back to
Mhm.
water. Is that how, how would you characterize water supply issues here in Thurston County? I'm thinking not so much just water rights, but just how much water is still in the ground and how much we can expect to be in the ground and how much demand there will be for it.
Yeah,
Because
it's a
I'll tell you,
great.
as a resident of Thurston County, I'm a little nervous about that.
Yeah, well, let me slip on my hydrologist's hat for just a moment here and try to make something up. Uh, I read I read so many reports from the scientists who were working on our water rights over the years, trying to understand this water issue, the difference in the different aquifers that we have and how they are supplied and what we tap into. As a great example, here in Yelm, our main municipal water supply are from two wells in the center of Yelm that go down about 65 feet
Only
into a
two
very
wells.
shallow.
Only two.
What's that, John?
Just two wells?
There were just two wells. There were three that one dried up. So there were two that were pumping. And then, gosh, 10 years ago now, and again, it's in anticipation of getting our water rights, we got a bond passed, and we built a new well that tapped into a different aquifer. It went down 600 feet. Went into a completely different aquifer that had no connection, no connection to the higher aquifer, no connection except theoretical to the river. We still had to do mitigation to make sure that, because there was a hypothetical or a theoretical connection to the river, and by doing some mitigation, we were able to satisfy that impact. But my understanding is both of these aquifers are going to be impacted by climate change dramatically, some sooner than later. So the more shallow one is fed a lot by the rainwater in the hills that comes down, and that's affecting the Nisqually River water flows. And then they're both, the high and the low, are both affected by the water that's coming off of Mount Rainier in our watershed. And as we lose our snowpack due to warming global temperatures, we're going to have less and less water feeding into those aquifers, which may not be manifested in dropping water levels in the deeper aquifer for hundreds of years, but the shallow aquifer is going to be affected sooner. And most of the wells that would go into residential development in the county would be tapping into that shallower system of aquifers. And so you can only put so many straws in the ground before you start sucking it dry. Hence, why they want you to hook up to a municipal water system, which is much more efficient than having individual wells. And I support that concept.
Okay. Yes, there was legislation that almost went through this past session that yeah, I had to soak myself in water rights there for a while. It gets complicated. Let's move over to housing. What measures should the county take for the homeless?
So it depends on how you want to use the word. Of course, there's a lot of different definitions to what homeless means. Unhoused is maybe different than transient people or itinerant people. So everybody deserves a safe place to live. And we have done a lot, I think, in Thurston County, various organizations with county support and with state support, mostly done by municipalities, mostly Olympia and Lacey. Thank you both for doing that, to provide for emergency housing for the people who are the most vulnerable. I had challenges with that in Yelm. We literally, when we moved in, we had one homeless guy in Yelm, and everybody knew him, and he chose to live that way. And now we have, on any given day, I think the point in time said that we had some 50 or 60 people that they counted as being unhoused in the Yelm area. And of course, the number is greater as you go in towards the urban core where services are. We have an obligation, a moral obligation as people to provide them with a safe place to live. And we also need to encourage them to take advantage of services that would help them get out of their homeless or unhoused situation. And it's so deep. I wish I had an answer for you that could satisfy it all. But in the meantime, as we build those other services up, we have to have the short-term and medium restriction housing available to get people off the street into a safer environment.
And do you see that as a county responsibility?
Absolutely, yeah. And we are the Board of Health. The county commissioners are the Board of Health as well, although they expanded. It used to be just the 3 commissioners and staff, and it wasn't their best work. And now that the Board of Health has expanded and involves representatives from the municipalities, from the tribe, and citizens at large, there's more voices coming together to help us understand what the Board of Health's role can be. And their mission, I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly, but the Board of Health's mission is to provide opportunities for people and families to live their best lives. And so that's part of it. Yeah, it is the county commissioners have a big role in that.
Do you see a connection between homelessness and the drug problem? I'm thinking of fentanyl especially.
Yeah, well, absolutely. As of course, as a paramedic here in the county, and I was a paramedic for 34 years. I started in Los Angeles. Heroin was the drug of choice back then. And as an example, we would give a dosage of Narcan that was 0.4 milligrams to reverse most of the heroin overdoses that we would see back there in LA. And flash forward to the late 90s and early 2000s, and the heroin that was coming in, and then the fentanyl and the oxy and all the other narcotic-based drugs were so strong that we start with 2 milligrams of Narcan to try to knock them out of their overdose.
5 times as much?
Yes, to start with, and oftentimes have to multi-dose them to get them out of that critical overdose that they're into, and that's why it's killing so many people. The people who get hooked on these drugs and others, it used to be methamphetamine, not so much anymore because it's actually cheaper to get the narcotics. The people who get hooked on that need help to get, or they will die. So any programs that we have that can help facilitate that recovery is important to get them off the street and get them back to lives. I personally know a number of people who have recovered from their drug addiction successfully, and you wouldn't know who they were because they've recovered so well. And unfortunately, I have professionally known literally hundreds of people who died from their addiction. So it's definitely a problem that we have to deal with. And I love the fact that we've taken great steps. So like, for example, Narcan, anybody here can go to their pharmacy and get Narcan, and you should. You carry it with you. It's a nasal spray. And here's your first aid lesson for the night is if you find somebody unconscious, unresponsive to you, open up their eye and look at their pupil. And if it's pinpoint, they're in a narcotic overdose. Squirt the Narcan up their nose and watch what happens. That's the first step in saving the life.
Thank you.
So, yeah, you're welcome. So we have a lot of things we can do as a Board of Health can provide that. Everybody should be able to have that. Everybody should have the training. And of course, it goes beyond just the narcotics and the drugs. It's mental health and behavioral problems that need to be dealt with at a systemic level. We need to find services for people to help them out. And if I may, I take it all the way back to, as a firefighter, when we go to a house that's burning, and we put the fire out, we think, but we still see smoke. We know that there's still fire there. And so we don't just blow the smoke out of the house. We go look for the root and we put out the fire. And I think the root of the cause in a large part in our community is that we aren't working enough with our kids to give them a solid path to a better future so that they can avoid the risks and the pitfalls that put them in that situation where they turn to drugs and alcohol and bad behaviors. And so that's why it's been a big part of my life, my wife's life, to work with the career and technical education programs in our schools and other programs that help youth find that successful path to their future.
Thank you. That was a good segue because I wanted to ask you about the Yelm Community Schools levy. That's yes, the failure of that levy means less money for programs like athletics, mental health, special ed. As a county commissioner, what could you do about that?
That is a real tough one. Thanks for bringing me down too much. I was having so disappointing. We have not had a double failure of our operations levy in 40 years. And we have a brand new director, Chris Woods and the school board are really struggling. It's a $15 million hit to our school system. That's about a 13% reduction in our overall budget. It's devastating.
That's bad.
It's bad. And the people who voted no for it, I get it. They just wanted a way to reduce their taxes, although in general, it's reducing their tax by maybe $60 a year to not have this levy on there. It was just, as you all know, it was a continuous levy that just needed to be reapproved by the voters every 4 years. And a lot of programs were built on that money. The state actually rewards the communities that pass their levy by giving them an additional $2 million to go towards these programs. Some of them are lost for a long time, and they affect different people differently. Things like the music programs, the special ed programs, the teaching assistants that help a teacher who has 25 or 30 students in their class and have a couple of kids who need special attention. They need these teachers' assistants to deal with that. They're gone. Transportations are gone. It's going to be a very tough road. And I don't know if the county commissioners can have a direct impact on supplanting those efforts. I know that the county commissioners and the school district supervisors all meet regularly, and I've asked each one of the superintendents in my district, what can I do as at a county commissioner level to help you? And there's nothing specific right now other than to keep the communication open, unfortunately.
Thank you. Now, we asked you about the 3 initiatives that are on the ballot this November, and your answers were nuanced. If I can sum them up, on Initiative 2117, which would repeal the Climate Commitment Act, you were a no on that. You said you agree with cap and trade as an incentive, although I think we'd like to call it cap and invest.
Yes.
Yes, on Initiative 2109, which would repeal the capital gains tax on the ultra wealthy, you were against that as well, right?
Against repealing that. I think the capital gains tax is a good revenue source and appropriate.
Yeah. And then on Initiative 2124, it sounds like you're a yes on that. Can you elaborate a bit on that? This one
What did I say?
Yeah. This one would allow people to opt out individually from the Washington CARES Act. Now, when you let people opt out from something like that, you basically put it out of business, don't you?
Okay. I think it was a terrible plan to begin with. And because it doesn't help a person who gets into that situation for very long. I had my mom in long-term care for 4 years. And fortunately, we had the money in her investment account to pay for it. A regular person who gets into a situation where they need to be in a long-term care facility typically you don't go in there for 6 months. And that's pretty much all that this Washington CARES Act pays for at the end of the day. You're going to be in there for years. Medicare doesn't pay for it. You have to plan for this well in advance, and I didn't think that the CARES Act did a good job of doing that. I understood the idea, but it just wasn't enough to actually care for people when they get into that stage of their life, I thought.
I see. I understand that. Yeah, I had some of the same evaluation, though I'm still in favor of keeping it. It's 6 months worth of care is better than 0 months worth of care, but we don't need to argue about that. I want to mention to our participants that we are nearing the end of the prepared questions. So if you're thinking about a question and you haven't put it in the chat yet, time to slap a Q on it and put it in the chat. GW, let's talk about Thurston County adopting home rule. Would that be a good idea?
To become a charter county?
Yeah, a home rule county.
Yeah. I just had a conversation with somebody about this today, actually, and I just don't see what the benefit would be directly
Mhm.
to Thurston County at this time. I know there's only 7 counties in the state who have adopted home rule, and it seems to be working well for King County, I guess, and Pierce and um, I think Whatcom County's in that group, and they all seem to be doing well. I'm not sure what it gains them exactly, other than it does provide an opportunity to have a different form of control over some of the elected positions. So I think the argument that I heard best was that it puts more of an oversight opportunity, like creating a joint effort between the sheriff's department and the health department. If you're already putting programs in place through our county government the way we are, I don't know that changing the form of government would be advantageous or any better. But if you don't have those things in place, then I would see where home rule would have an opportunity to make things different.
Okay.
I
So,
think Thurston County tried to do this back in 1968 or 78, didn't they? And it didn't go over with the voters then. So it would be a hard row to hoe, I think, to get people to adopt that.
okay, thank you. How do your views differ from those of strong conservatives who have endorsed you, like Gary Edwards and Andrew Barkis and John Hutchings?
So what I've really liked about Gary Edwards, to be most specific to my county commissioner district, is that he has spoken well at the commissioner level, voicing the concerns of his constituency. They weren't always very popular. Like he said, when there were 3 commissioners, he voted down 2-1, and now when it went to 5 commissioners, he voted down 4-1. But he was still proud of the fact that he was representing the people who had elected him into that office. And I appreciated his work to do that. Now, I fairly commonly disagreed with him on his stance on some of the policies that he worked toward, but we managed to get through them anyway. And I do believe that Gary's ideas have had their day. And as you've seen from my work in the county, I'm much more moderate in my way of thinking about those things. And I would be a different kind of independent voice on the commission. As far as the other representatives who endorsed me, Marilyn Strickland, of course, has seen my work and endorsed me right away, which I really appreciate, as has Mayor Ryder. But Andrew Barkis and JT Wilcox, again, have represented Legislative District 2 very, very well. I really appreciate what JT Wilcox has done as far as being able to work with both sides of the aisle. Now, he's been very critical of our governor and of other policies, and yet he's maintained a connection to the voice of the conservative people in our district, and there's lots of them, obviously, but has tempered that with the idea that we have to work together to move things along in the state. He's retiring now, and we have some new candidates. I will see who gets the role. It's always been a conservative district, but we have a couple of strong Democrats that are running for those both the Senate position and the representative position. So we'll see how those change at the legislative level. But again, I don't necessarily agree or disagree with any but one particular idea on these folks. What I do feel good about is that I can communicate with all of them. I can talk to them on both sides and hopefully find a collaborative way toward a common future.
Great, thank you.
That
Now,
sounded confusing even.
Yeah, that's okay.
A couple questions in the chat.
Yeah, I was actually just about to ask you, John. Would you like to relay a couple of those?
That's
I'm
it.
sure
I'm
the
fine with
Mentorski
you
is a
doing
great
it.
one. What?
Go ahead. You do.
Oh, thanks a lot. So we have a question regarding on the initiative 2124, the Washington Cares one. Do you agree that it's a good idea to go forward with this legislation, even though it's not going to cover someone for more than 6 months? It gives people the chance to make further plans, such as moving into a relative's home or bringing in episodic care or getting onto Medicaid for supports and services at home. So rather than full bore long-term care, it would give you a transitional care.
Yeah, I think that's great. If it can provide opportunities like that, then it might be beneficial. The problem with not doing it is that then you have to tell people, well, you better plan yourself to put money aside so that you can have this kind of care in your senior years. And people tend not to do that. So this is, it's kind of like the state saying you got to wear your seatbelt. People might not wear their seatbelt unless there was a mandate for that. And we know the results of not wearing your seatbelt. So this is an opportunity by the state to try to help people help themselves. I don't think it was planned out very well, and I think it could do better towards helping people with some of those options. That would be good. But for long-term care, it's insufficient.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now a couple more from the chat. The regional trail network.
Yeah.
We've got, Yelman to Nino and the Chehalis Western and the Belmore Gate Trail. That's a new one on me. What's your position on trail expansion and maintenance?
Thank you for asking one of my favorite questions. I really like the
I'm
TRPC.
glad I gave you
The
like
TRPC, the TRPC came out with this really cool bike trail map in the county that you can get from their website, or you can get in a hard copy from a variety of places. We have such great trail systems in Thurston County, but it wasn't done by accident. These were people who were forward thinking and took advantage of moving away from trains and using those train lines to create trails. Ever since I moved to Yelm, I wanted to expand the Yelm Tenino Trail, which I'll shout out to Mayor Bob Shaw from Rainier, is now called the Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail.
All right.
But I always wanted to expand that because Yelm owns the rail line that goes from Yelm east across the Nisqually River all the way out to Roy. And I always wanted to expand the trail out there, and I couldn't get the money for it and couldn't get the money for it. And then just as I was retiring from being mayor, the public works director, Cody Colt, said, hey, I think we might have found the money for it. And so we're going to have our grand opening, or ribbon cutting of our new extension of the Yelm to the River Trail next week. So the Yelm Tenino Trail or the Chehalis Western Trail, you can ride your bike all the way from Woodard Bay, all the way down the trail to Tenino, turn east on the Yelm Tenino Trail and drive all the way out, ride your bike all the way out to the Nisqually River. We will then continue to build that across the river on a pedestrian-only bridge. And no, we can't turn that into a road to solve our traffic problems. I'm sorry, those who think that we can, but we can't do that.
Oh, I can tell
and
you're
then-
peeking at the chat now.
No, I'm not, but that's just a continual issue that we have in Yelm, of course. People just want to build another bridge across the river to solve our problems with the traffic, and it doesn't fix anything. But the Yelm to Nino Trail, the Yelm to the River Trail, and soon the Yelm to Roy Trail is going to be a great economic boon to the region. Even as it exists today, people were coming from all over Western Washington to park in the parking lot at the old city hall to ride their bikes up and down the trail. They just love it. And when they do that, they bring their expendable income down to Thurston County and drop it off here. So I love trails, and look forward to being able to expand them even more.
Great, thank you. Now, we are getting a little short on time, so I'm going to pick 3 questions from chat and see if we can get through them. How can the county further high-speed internet development in rural areas? This is a twofer. And how about addressing transportation bottlenecks between West and East County?
So I don't think the county's going to fix the high-speed internet problem. I think the commercial industry is going to fix the internet problem. The Skylink and other such operations are going to come in and take care of that issue. If the county can help them with that, then yeah, great. But I haven't seen anything come before the county commissioners that would greatly enhance internet for people in the rural areas. You can't get enough towers up there to do that successfully. It's going to have to be some innovation in communications that is going to be in the private enterprise. I believe. If I could get Skylink at my house, I would do it. I'm going to knock on wood and say thank you, internet gods, for not freezing up my internet tonight so far.
Hasn't been too bad.
It is an issue that if there's an opportunity for the county commissioners to enhance internet connection in the rural areas, I'll look towards supporting that as best we can.
But you don't see it coming down the road.
Not yet, no. Not by governmental means, no. Transportation issues, near and dear to my heart, of course, out here in Yelm, I coined the phrase "all roads go through Yelm" on their way to Mount Rainier, and on a given day, trying to get freight traffic and regular traffic, east or west on Highway 507 is troublesome. Shut down I-5, and it's a catastrophe. Like when we had the train wreck, 3 days of complete chaos, where people were having to go east from Portland to get to Seattle. And again, talking to the Department of Transportation years ago, he came to the TRPC meeting and said, we can't build our way out of this. We have to think our way out of it. And we started talking about fully connected, automated vehicles. And I think that's going to be where we can put our money best in the future, is when we go all electric and when we go all connected, and take the human element out of transportation, we'll solve a lot of the problems, at least as far as the north-south goes. Connectivity within county, not a whole lot that we could do as a county to enhance the 507 route. Would be billions and billions of dollars, and where that money is going to be spent first is to fix the I-5 corridor through the Nisqually Valley. That is already, being looked at. It's nearing critical. If we don't do it now prophylactically, we're going to do it catastrophically when the Nisqually River decides to take out the I-5 there in the valley.
So that's sounds like we need to take care of existing infrastructure. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And we haven't even started about the bridges, the little bridges.
They're such cute little bridges. I really like them. Do you plan to this? We need to move on here. Do you plan to represent conservative views regarding reproductive rights, access to abortion services?
This is the biggest travesty that has visited our nation in my lifetime. It's horrible what's happened. I believe firmly in a woman's right to choose, and everything that the conservatives have done to infringe on those rights is just evil. So everything that we can do as a Board of Health, as county commissioners, as municipal leaders, to prevent that infringement on a woman's rights, we will do so.
Thank you. I think, yeah, I think that will do it for now. I'm going to, is there anything else that you would like to say by way of wrapping up?
Yeah, thank you. First off, again, for accommodating my change in schedule. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciated the challenging questions. It helps me think and get me ready for the hard work ahead. My campaign is largely going to be based on people to people. If you know an organization that I could go speak to and answer their questions, even if it's a small neighborhood group, a book club, whatever you got, I would like to go talk to them and get my message out. I'm not big on littering the sides of the roads and intersections with signs, and I'm not big on knocking on people's doors and interrupting their meals at dinner time with phone calls. So I want to do a people-to-people campaign, and anything you could do to help me get out to meet more people would be great. I look
Okay.
forward to doing the work.
And should they do that by going to your campaign site, which I see Madeline has dropped in the chat here?
Thank you, Madeline. Yes, fosterforcommissioner.com. I also have a robust Facebook page, thanks to my daughter, who is my campaign person. She's doing great help there. Lots of ways for you to connect with me. Fosterforcommissioner@gmail.com is also another way to get a hold of me. And look forward to answering any other questions you have down the road.
All right, thank you. Thanks to everyone for coming. Check out the Olympia Indivisible website for candidate information. We're dropping the link for that into the chat. We have upcoming events. We are dropping the links to them into the chat. There's a town hall with Bob Isle, Tuesday, June 18th at 6:30 p.m. He's running for the state Senate. There will be an endorsement team presentation on all the candidates we've been checking out. That'll be Saturday, June 22nd at 10 a.m. And as I said, we have more candidate information on the OI website. That's www.olympiaindivisible.org. Thanks very much to J.W. Foster for coming and talking with us, to John Cezanne for invaluable help and counsel, to our tech team, Sharon Herting, Madeline Bishop, and Riley McLaughlin for doing all the technical work that makes this look easy. And I think that'll bring it to the end. Thanks very much and have a good evening.
All right. Thank you, folks.
Thanks.